I was drowning in my own life, and I didn't even know it. Picture this: a 27-year-old staring at a cracked bathroom mirror at 3 a.m., eyes bloodshot, heart racing, wondering why every day felt like a rerun of the same miserable episode. I had a decent job, a small apartment, and enough followers on Instagram to feel like I mattered. But the truth? I hated myself. I hated the way I'd scroll through my phone for hours, comparing my messy life to everyone else's highlight reels. I hated how I'd snap at my friends over nothing, then cry myself to sleep because I felt so alone. I was stuck in a cycle of self-loathing, and I didn't know how to break free. That was me 3 years ago, before I stumbled across You Can Heal Your Life by Louise Hay, a book that didn't just change my perspective but ripped my world apart and rebuilt it from the ground up. It all started with a fight. Not a fist fight, but the kind that leaves you emotionally bruised. My best friend Sarah called me out after I bailed on her birthday dinner. "You're always distracted," she said, her voice sharp. "It's like you're not even here anymore." I wanted to scream that she was wrong, but deep down I knew she was right. I was physically there, sure, but my mind was always elsewhere, lost in a fog of anxiety, self-doubt, and endless notifications. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat on my couch, staring at my phone, and realized I'd spent 9 hours that day on it. 9 hours. That's more time than I spent eating, working, or even talking to another human being. I felt like a ghost in my own life, drifting through days without meaning or purpose. The next morning, I walked into a bookstore, desperate for something, anything, to make me feel less broken. That's when I saw it. A worn copy of You Can Heal Your Life on a discount shelf, its bright cover screaming hope in a way that felt almost mocking. I bought it on a whim, not expecting much. I mean, how could a self-help book fix someone as messed up as me? But as I started reading, Louise Hay's words hit me like a freight train. She wrote about how our thoughts shape our reality, how the way we talk to ourselves can either build us up or tear us down. I'd never thought about it before, but I realized I was my own worst enemy. Every day I'd wake up and tell myself I wasn't good enough, smart enough, or worthy enough. And guess what? My life reflected that. My relationships were crumbling, my career was stagnant, and my mental health was in shambles. I remember sitting in my tiny apartment, the book open on my lap, and reading a line that stopped me cold. The point of power is always in the present moment. I don't know why, but it felt like Louise was speaking directly to me. I looked around my cluttered room, dirty dishes in the sink, laundry piling up, my phone buzzing with notifications I didn't even care about, and I broke down. I wasn't just failing at life. I was failing at being me. I'd spent years blaming everyone else for my problems. My parents for not being supportive enough, my boss for not recognizing my potential, my friends for not understanding me. But the truth was, I was the one holding myself back. I was the one choosing to stay stuck. That realization was brutal. It was like staring into a mirror and seeing all the ugliness I'd been ignoring for years. I spent weeks wrestling with it, rereading passages from the book, scribbling notes in the margins. One exercise Louise suggested was to write down every negative thought I had about myself and then rewrite it as a positive affirmation. I tried it, feeling ridiculous at first. I wrote, "I'm a failure," and then forced myself to write, "I am capable of creating a life I love." It felt fake, like I was lying to myself, but I kept going. Every morning, I'd stand in front of that cracked bathroom mirror and say those affirmations out loud, even though I didn't believe them. I am enough. I am worthy. I am capable. My voice would shake, and sometimes I'd cry, but I didn't stop. Slowly, things started to shift. I noticed I wasn't reaching for my phone as often. I started small, deleting Instagram for a week, then two. I replaced scrolling with journaling, writing down my thoughts instead of numbing them with likes and comments. I began to notice the world around me again, the way the sunlight filtered through my window, the sound of my neighbor's dog barking, the smell of coffee brewing. For the first time in years, I felt present. I wasn't just surviving, I was starting to live. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. There were days when I'd slip back into old habits, when the voice in my head would scream that I was wasting my time, that I'd never change. I remember one night, about 6 months into this journey, when I had a panic attack so bad I thought I was going to die. I was lying on the floor, gasping for air, convinced I'd never be free of the darkness inside me. But then I remembered something else from the book. Every thought we think is creating our future. I forced myself to breathe, to repeat my affirmations, to believe that I could choose a different path. And I did. By the end of that first year, I was a different person. I'd quit my soul-sucking job and started freelancing, something I'd always been too scared to try. I'd rebuilt my friendship with Sarah, apologizing for the ways I'd let her down. I was sleeping better, eating healthier, and, most importantly, I was starting to like the person I saw in the mirror. Not because my life was perfect, but because I was finally taking responsibility for it. Louise Hay's book didn't magically fix everything, but it gave me the tools to start healing. It showed me that I had the power to change how I saw myself, and that changed everything. The moment I realized I could rewrite my own story, it was like a switch flipped inside me. But knowing you need to change and actually doing it, that's where the real fight begins. I'd spent so long trapped in my own head, drowning in negative thoughts, that breaking free felt like trying to climb a mountain with no gear. Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life didn't just give me a map, it handed me a toolbox. And let me tell you, those tools weren't shiny or easy to use at first. They were heavy, awkward, and sometimes I wanted to throw them away. But they worked. I'm not here to sell you some fairy tale about overnight success. I'm here to share the messy, practical steps that pulled me out of the darkness and into a life I didn't think was possible. The first step was brutal. Facing my thoughts head on. Louise talks about how every thought we think shapes our reality, and I realized mine were a landfill of negativity. I'd wake up every morning with a voice in my head saying, "You're going to screw this up," or "Why even try?" So I started with something small but deliberate, a thought audit. I carried a tiny notebook around for a week and wrote down every negative thought that popped into my head. By day 3, I had pages filled with stuff like, "I'm too lazy to succeed," "Nobody cares about me," "I'll never be as good as her." It was exhausting, but it was also a wake-up call. I couldn't unsee how much I was sabotaging myself. The solution? I started rewriting those thoughts, one by one. For every "I'm not good enough," I'd write, "I am learning and growing every day." I didn't believe it at first, but I stuck with it, repeating these affirmations out loud every morning. It felt like shouting into a void, but over time that void started to echo back something hopeful. Next, I tackled my environment. My apartment was a physical reflection of my mental chaos, cluttered, disorganized, and draining. Louise emphasizes creating a space that supports your healing, so I went all in. I spent a weekend decluttering, throwing out old clothes, scrubbing dishes, and even buying a cheap plant to add some life to the place. But the biggest change was my phone. I was addicted, spending 9 hours a day scrolling through social media, comparing myself to strangers who seemed to have it all together. So I set boundaries. I deleted apps that triggered my insecurities. Instagram was the first to go. I turned off notifications and set my phone to grayscale to make it less addictive. I also started leaving it in another room when I worked or ate. It sounds simple, but it was like cutting off a limb at first. The result? I gained back hours of my day, and my mind felt clearer, like I'd finally turned down the volume on a blaring radio. Then came the hardest part, forgiving myself. Louise writes a lot about forgiveness, and I realized I was carrying around years of guilt and shame. I hated myself for wasting time, for pushing people away, for not being further along in life. I remember sitting on my couch one night, journal in hand, writing a letter to myself. I poured out everything, every mistake, every regret, and then I wrote, "I forgive you." I cried so hard I could barely see the page. It wasn't a one-time fix. I had to keep forgiving myself, day after day, for the ways I'd let myself down. But each time I did, I felt a little lighter, like I was shedding layers of baggage I didn't even know I was carrying. Another step was taking action toward my goals, no matter how small. I'd always wanted to freelance as a graphic designer, but I'd convinced myself I wasn't good enough. Louise's book talks about taking responsibility for your dreams, so I started small. I signed up for an online course, spending an hour each night learning new skills. I reached out to a friend who'd freelanced before and asked for advice. Within 3 months, I landed my first client, a small $200 project that felt like winning the lottery. It wasn't about the money. It was about proving to myself that I could do it. Each step built momentum, and by the end of the year, I was earning $1,500 a month on the side, enough to quit my dead-end job. The final piece was surrounding myself with positivity. I'd always been drawn to negative people because they mirrored my own mindset. But Louise emphasizes choosing relationships that uplift you, so I started being intentional about who I spent time with. I reconnected with Sarah, my friend I'd hurt, and we had an honest conversation about my struggles. She became my biggest cheerleader. I also joined an online community of people working on self-improvement, where we shared tips and held each other accountable. It wasn't perfect. There were still toxic days and toxic people, but I learned to set boundaries and protect my energy. These steps didn't just change my habits, they changed how I saw myself. Before, I was someone who felt worthless, stuck in a cycle of comparison and despair. Now, I'm not perfect, but I'm someone who believes in their own potential. I went from spending 9 hours a day on my phone to just 2, from earning nothing on the side to making $18,000 a year freelancing, from feeling isolated to rebuilding friendships that matter. The difference wasn't magic. It was action. Small, consistent, messy action. Louise Hay's tools gave me a framework, but I had to do the work. And if I can do it, so can you. Here I am, standing on the other side of a life I never thought I could have. 3 years ago, I was a shadow of myself, lost in a haze of self-doubt, glued to my phone, and convinced I'd never amount to anything. Today, I'm not just surviving. I'm building a life I'm proud of. I've gone from sleepless nights and panic attacks to waking up with purpose, from a cluttered apartment and a cluttered mind to a space that feels like home. I'm freelancing, earning $2,000 a month doing work I love, and I've rebuilt relationships I thought were gone forever. But the biggest change? I believe in myself. Not in some cheesy motivational poster way, but in a quiet, unshakable way that keeps me going even on the hardest days. And here's the thing. If I can do it, you can too. You don't need to wait for a perfect moment or a perfect plan. You just need to start right now exactly where you are. Exactly. This isn't about me bragging or pretending I've got it all figured out. I still have days when that old voice in my head tries to drag me back, whispering that I'm not enough. But now, I know how to fight it. I know how to choose myself over and over again. And I want you to choose yourself too. You don't have to stay stuck in the cycle of comparison, anxiety, or self-loathing that's been holding you back. You don't have to keep scrolling through your phone, numbing yourself to a life you're not living. You have the power to change how you see yourself, and that changes everything. Louise Hay's You Can Heal Your Life showed me that. But it's not about the book, it's about what you do with the ideas. So, let's make this real. Let's talk about what you can do today to start healing your life. First, take one small step. Don't overthink it. Grab a notebook and write down one negative thought you've had about yourself today. Just one. Then flip it into something positive. If you wrote, "I'm a mess," try, "I'm learning to love who I am." Say it out loud, even if it feels stupid. Do it tomorrow, and the next day, and the day after that. It's not about believing it right away. It's about planting a seed. That seed will grow, I promise. Next, set one boundary with your phone. Maybe it's turning off notifications for an hour, or leaving it in another room while you eat dinner. Track your screen time for a week and see what it's stealing from you. I went from 9 hours a day to 2, and those 7 hours gave me back my life. You don't have to go cold turkey. Just start small and build from there. Then, do something kind for yourself. It could be cleaning one corner of your room, buying a $5 plant, or writing yourself a letter like I did. Forgive yourself for one thing you've been carrying. Maybe it's a mistake you made, a dream you let go, or a person you pushed away. You don't have to fix everything at once. You just have to start. And don't do it alone. Find one person, a friend, a family member, or even an online community who lifts you up. Share your journey with them, even if it's just a text saying, "I'm trying to change, and it's hard." You'd be surprised how many people want to cheer you on. Here's the truth. You're not going to wake up tomorrow as a brand new person. Healing isn't a straight line. There will be days when you feel like you're back at square one, when the weight of your old habits feels too heavy to lift. I've been there. I still have moments where I slip, where I spend too long on my phone or doubt my worth. But now I know those moments don't define me. They're just part of the journey. What matters is that you keep going. Every time you choose to say something kind to yourself, every time you set a boundary or take a step toward your dreams, you're rewriting your story. You're proving to yourself that you're worth it. So, here's my challenge to you. Start today. Not tomorrow, not next week, right now. Pick up a pen, open a notebook, and write down one thing you want to change about how you see yourself. Then take one action, no matter how small, to make it real. 2, maybe it's repeating an affirmation, deleting an app, or reaching out to a friend. Just do something. And if you're ready to go all in, grab a copy of You Can Heal Your Life and start reading. It's not a magic fix, but it's a roadmap. It'll show you that the power to change is already inside you. You just have to use it. I'm not here to sell you a dream. I'm here to tell you that you can wake up from the nightmare of feeling worthless and build a life you love. I did it, and I'm nobody special. Just a guy who decided to stop hating himself and start healing. So what's stopping you? What's one thing you can do right now to start seeing yourself differently? Drop it in the comments below. I want to hear your story. And if this video spoke to you, if it made you feel like maybe, just maybe, you can change, then hit that subscribe button. Join me on this journey. Let's heal together. Because you deserve a life that feels like yours, and it starts today.